Sip and Talk Pinta. So hello to all our Sip and Talkers out there.
Yeah, we are so glad you're here today because we are stepping way outside the traditional, dry newsroom format today.
Oh, for sure. We are getting into something much more bizarre.
Exactly. Like, imagine you are tracking a high-profile diplomatic visit between global leaders, and then you see a superpower officially describe it as a, quote, smuggling-style outward sneaking farce.
I mean, you literally can't make that up.
Right. So we aren't here to debate flight paths or boring itineraries. We are jumping into this completely wild, highly theatrical language used in geopolitics. We really want to deconstruct the logical paradoxes behind firing off these extreme words.
Yeah, it's fascinating because when you look at Taiwan President Lai Ching-te's recent trip to Eswatini, right? He was accompanied by Foreign Minister Lin Sha-lung and NSC advisor Huang Chunyan.
Totally standard stuff.
Exactly. On paper, it reads as a completely normal mission to an allied nation, but the rhetoric that Beijing dropped right after was just, well, it was anything but standard.
It was almost cinematic. They didn't just say, we disagree with this visit. They called it a stealthy visit. Like, the specific term used was quanfang.
Right, quanfang.
Yeah, and then they escalated it. That's when they threw out the whole smuggling-style, outward sneaking farce label.
I have to say, when I first read those headlines, my brain instantly went to, like, a Hollywood spy thriller.
Oh, totally. Like James Bond.
Yeah. I was genuinely picturing a head of state in a black wetsuit, swimming ashore in the dead of night, maybe cutting through a fence with bolt cutters. Or, I guess to put it in tech scene terms, it sounded exactly like a Silicon Valley startup operating in strict stealth mode.
Stealth mode, yes.
Yeah.
Getting ready for a massive product launch.
Just flying totally under the radar.
The imagery is just wildly dramatic. But I guess setting the mission for our conversation today, we need to figure out the architecture behind this. Why go through the immense effort of using such cartoonish language?
Well, it all comes down to a strategy of weaponized language. In political linguistics, there's this really cool concept called semantic dimensionality reduction.
Oh, semantic dimensionality reduction. I love that term. But let's break down how that actually works mechanically for the audience.
Okay, so think about compressing a stunning high-resolution image, right? Like a multi-gigabyte file.
Yeah, you just compress it down.
Right, you compress it over and over until it becomes this blurry, unrecognizable, pixelated mess. That is what state actors do with language. By choosing a highly loaded word, they actively strip away the complexity and the dignity of whatever they're describing.
They're just deleting the nuance.
Exactly. Let's look at the etymology of the word they used, quan. In Chinese, quan traditionally refers to rats scurrying or hiding or, fleeing in panic.
Rats scurrying, wow.
Yeah, it has this inherent baked-in implication of something dirty or illegal, something deeply shameful.
So, algorithmically speaking, it's not just a descriptive verb at all. It's a pre-packaged judgment. It's designed to completely bypass critical thought.
You got it.
Because, you don't visit if you are a rat, you scurry. It's perfectly designed to obliterate any sense of statecraft. And historically, this specific term wasn't even used for Taiwanese leaders.
Right. It used to be reserved for other targets.
Yeah, it was a linguistic missile strictly reserved for figures like the Dalai Lama.
But as geopolitical tensions have shifted, the target locks for those missiles have just pivoted to Taiwan.
Okay, but wait, let me push back on this a little bit, because this is where the logic actually fractures for me.
Oh, how so?
Well, by calling it a smuggling-style visit, aren't they accidentally giving Taiwan, like, a massive compliment?
Huh. I see where you're going with this.
I mean, if it's truly smuggling style, doesn't that inherently imply that Taiwan's diplomatic routing was just incredibly flexible? Like, they successfully bypassed every single blockade attempt thrown at them.
That is such a sharp observation. Yes, absolutely. It's a total unintentional admission of operational failure on their part.
Right.
By calling it a sneaking farce, they are basically broadcasting to the whole world, hey, we mobilized everything to block the front door, and they seamlessly just slipped through a window.
It just highlights that the global superpower fundamentally couldn't stop the trip from happening in real life. It's like a defensive coordinator complaining the other team's offense was too sneaky after giving up a huge touchdown.
Such a good analogy. And if we zoom out to the broader picture, This extreme language is actually a massive psychological defense mechanism.
A defense mechanism.
Okay.
Walk me through that.
So when a global power cannot physically or diplomatically stop an event from occurring in the real world, they urgently try to reclaim the moral high ground in the virtual world. They use what we call definition power.
Definition power.
Yeah. If you control the dictionary, you control the reality. Or at least you control the reality for your own domestic audience.
Right. You are creating a perfectly sealed information bubble.
Yeah.
But what does that actually accomplish? Like, if I'm consuming this media domestically, hearing words like scurrying and smuggling, I guess it just strengthens the vibe that the action is illegal, right?
Exactly. It reinforces the official narrative at home.
But on the flip side, if I'm a citizen in Taiwan, these labels don't intimidate me at all. They just trigger resentment or, honestly, eye rolls. It actively alienates the people they're talking about.
Which is the core bug in this strategy. It's just a linguistic echo chamber. But this brings up a vital question about how modern societies actually defend themselves against this.
Right, the defense strategy.
Yeah, if Beijing is constantly firing off these linguistic missiles, how do Taiwan and the international community intercept them? Because, you certainly can't shoot down a metaphor with a Patriot missile.
No, you definitely cannot. And this is where the operational defense gets incredibly innovative. Let's look at the civilian response first, because what the Taiwanese netizens do is just brilliant.
Oh, they are so quick with it.
They are. They completely refuse to get angry. Because in cognitive warfare, anger means the missile hit its target. Instead, they just use humor to completely deconstruct the threat.
The memes are incredible to watch in real time. You see platforms flooded with people taking the sting right out of the word. They make memes saying, wow, work was so exhausting this week. I really want to scurry to Eswatini for a vacation too.
Scurrying to the beach with a pina colada, it's perfect. In communication theory, the moment a heavy political term becomes a punchline, its power to intimidate drops to zero. You just disarm the bomb by laughing at it.
That's the organic civilian side. But the government response has also gone through a massive evolution. Like a decade ago, the default response would be a highly formalized, angry, diplomatic protest.
Lots of very sternly worded letters.
Exactly. But now, they just don't take the bait. They focus purely on active narrative building. They completely ignore the insult and use framing terms like pragmatic diplomacy and democratic value alliance.
What really fascinates me is their specific operational defense. It's called the 222 principle. And coming from the tech scene, this reads exactly like a masterclass in crisis PR.
Oh, it really does.
Let's break down the mechanics for everyone. When a piece of cognitive warfare drops, the government's mandate is to respond within 2 hours. Use exactly 2 images and keeping the text under 200 words.
It is so effective because it deeply understands how the modern internet ecosystem actually functions. A 10-page academic rebuttal might be entirely accurate, but it is practically useless on a social media feed.
It's just dead weight. You need speed, visual impact, and extreme brevity. Why 2 hours? Because that's the precise window before a rumor achieves viral escape velocity. Once it's trending, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Right. And 2 images because the algorithm heavily favors visual content. And keeping it under 200 words respects the microscopic attention span of a scrolling user.
It neutralizes the rumor before it even has time to put its shoes on.
And this institutional defense is backed up by civic platforms acting as, well, cognitive vaccines. Organizations like COFAX and the Taiwan Fact Check Center operate independently to dissect these loaded terms and build societal immunity.
We're also seeing this pushback scaling up internationally, which is huge. Like the US and Japan are completely diluting this sneaky label by simply normalizing these high-level talks.
It's treating it as business as usual.
Exactly. Treating diplomatic visits as entirely routine. Trump and other U.S. leaders have shown that if you just treat a controversial meeting as a completely normal Tuesday afternoon, all of the manufactured theatrical outrage just loses its oxygen.
Precisely. And look at the EU Parliament. They have explicitly refused to accept Beijing's unilateral definition of Taiwan. They've passed resolutions actively demanding the use of terms like partnership instead of accepting derogatory labels.
So the ultimate takeaway for the language part of this is, if nobody buys your label goes bankrupt.
Yeah, pretty much.
You can yell scurrying rat at the top of your lungs all day long, but if the EU is laying out the red carpet for a partner, your definition power just abruptly stops at your own borders.
Which brings us to the most fascinating and honestly the most mind-bending part of this entire discussion. We need to stare directly into the massive logical black hole sitting at the center of this narrative.
Yes, the core paradox.
Like,
because it is staggering when you actually map it out. Beijing's foundational geopolitical claim is that the Republic of China, Taiwan, fundamentally does not exist.
Right.
They claim it vanished in 1949. No president, no government, no sovereignty.
Yeah.
Yet they actively mobilize their foreign ministry, their Taiwan Affairs Office, and heavily deploy their military apparatus to react to this supposedly non-existent entity.
It is the ultimate logical contradiction.
I was trying to explain this to a friend recently, and the only analogy that worked was dealing with a deeply toxic ex.
Oh my gosh, yes. Let's hear it.
It's like someone screaming at the top of their lungs, "I've completely forgotten about you. You don't even exist to me anymore," while simultaneously posting angry rants about that exact same exes on their stories 3 times a day, tracking their location, and trying to get their friends to stop talking to them.
That is the absolute perfect analogy because, in formal logic, there is this axiom called the law of excluded middle. A proposition is either true or false. There is no middle ground.
Right.
If something truly, fundamentally does not exist, it has no mass, no presence, you simply do not respond to it. By marshaling the vast resources of a global superpower to respond to a nothing, you are undeniably proving that it is a something.
It's like shadowboxing a ghost and then holding a press conference to complain that the ghost is wearing illegal boxing gloves. You just validated the ghost.
Exactly. And the legal contradictions are just as glaring. Beijing consistently cites pre-1949 international treaties to justify its territorial claims, like the UN Charter itself, which was originally signed by the Republic of China.
Wait, so they rely heavily on the legal authority of an entity to claim vast territory, but demand the world believe that the signing entity vanished into thin air.
Yep. That's the demand.
Let's bring in some terminology from the tech scene to diagnose this, because it truly feels like a state-sponsored collective hypnosis.
Oh.
We are talking about state-scale cognitive dissonance.
Yes. The psychological stress of holding 2 completely contradictory beliefs at the exact same time and attempting to act on both of them simultaneously.
It's just a massive campaign of gaslighting on a global scale, telling the international community and the people of Taiwan, hey, what you're seeing with your own eyes, the elections, the passports, the bustling economy, none of that is real.
They are demanding everyone operate inside their post-truth bubble. And honestly, organizationally, it's a textbook case of drinking one's own Kool-Aid.
For sure.
When a government repeats an absurd piece of propaganda for decades, the internal bureaucracy actually starts to believe it. They lose the bandwidth to see the world as it actually is, which leads to catastrophic policy decisions.
Which perfectly transitions us into the real-world fallout. Because this isn't just a fun philosophical debate about toxic exes. This profound cognitive dissonance is actively glitching their real-world policies. Let's look at the timeline from 2024 to 2026.
The recent timeline is incredibly revealing when you look at the raw data. Let's start with 2025. At the 2 sessions meetings, the overarching message broadcast to the global media was all about peaceful reunification, winning hearts and minds.
Right.
But simultaneously, quietly behind the scenes, they systematically deleted the word peace from their official defense white paper and launched massive live-fire military drills around the island.
It's the ultimate mixed signal, like, we come in peace, please ignore the hypersonic ballistic missiles flying overhead. But 2026 is where the glitch becomes almost comical. In April of 2026, the Taiwan Affairs Office rolls out a highly publicized package of 10 favorable policies.
Right, offering economic incentives and trying to charm Taiwanese youth.
Exactly. They're practically begging for engagement.
Yeah.
But at the exact same moment, literally the same month, the system is fighting itself.
Because while the front office is handing out flyers for favorable policies, the back office is utilizing sophisticated big data to severely restrict domestic travel. And they're maintaining these sudden, weaponized bans on Taiwanese grouper fish, pineapples, and critical tech components.
Let's talk about those tech components for a second, especially regarding the CGPS Act. You have the U.S. passing the CIGPS Act to secure semiconductor supply chains. Right. So Taiwan aligns its export controls with those standards.
Makes total sense.
In retaliation, Beijing slaps bans on peripheral tech imports. But how do you reconcile that? You cannot claim you are building a deeply trusting economic zone with 10 favorable policies while actively attacking a region's foundational agricultural and tech economy.
It's what analysts call a candy and stick approach. But it's executed so poorly, they repeatedly hitting you over the head with a stick while acting genuinely confused as to why you won't eat the candy they left on the table.
And this cognitive dissonance extends heavily to international law. The double standards are wild. On one hand, regarding the war in Ukraine, they preach absolute, uncompromising respect for national sovereignty and territorial integrity.
But then pivot to the South China Sea. They completely reject the 1982 UNCLOS, the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, specifically the ruling that dismantled their maritime claims.
You cannot champion the sanctity of international law in Europe while actively shredding it in Asia.
And nothing highlights this gaslighting quite like their ongoing misrepresentation of UN Resolution 2758. You see this thrown around constantly in press briefings as, like, the ultimate trump card.
As back in 1971, right?
Yes. The manufactured narrative is that this resolution completely settled Taiwan's status on the global stage permanently.
But if you actually pull up the text of 2758, which is remarkably short, by the way, it strictly and exclusively addresses the issue of representation at the United Nations, like who gets to sit in the China Sea. It doesn't contain a single syllable dictating sovereignty over Taiwan. It doesn't address the political status of Taiwan at all. Yet they weaponize it to block Taiwan from participating in things like the World Health Assembly.
Which brings us to a crucial geopolitical insight. When you map all this out, the scurrying language, the law of excluded middle paradoxes, the contradictory policies, what you are looking at is severe strategic self-deception. Some analysts call it delusional consistency.
Delusional consistency. I really, really like that framing, meaning they are remarkably consistent and disciplined in maintaining the boundaries of their own delusion.
That's exactly. They are trying so hard to keep their internal narrative consistent that they have completely detached from reality. And it signals something very important to the rest of the world. Their policy toolbox is practically empty.
That right there is the real takeaway. When the toolbox is empty, you just start hitting everything with the same broken hammer.
Because they are structurally unable to win hearts and minds through transparent governance or genuine partnership, they are stuck in a loop. They use extreme language and aggressive economic bans that yield absolutely zero diplomatic ROI.
It doesn't win them a single friend. It just accelerates international pushback and alienates the exact generation they want to integrate. It is an exhausting expenditure of state energy just to keep the illusion from collapsing.
Totally.
Now, as we wrap up this conversation today, we want to be incredibly clear about the foundation of our analysis for everyone listening.
Yes, absolutely. We want to explicitly clarify that this discussion is a logical, strictly objective analysis of geopolitical facts and communication strategies. There is absolutely no criticism, malice, or discrimination intended against any country or its people.
Not at all.
Our fundamental goal here at Sip&Talk is to encourage critical, independent thinking. In an era of absolute information overload and algorithmic manipulation, we just want to help you build your logical immunity.
Build that logical immunity, spot the paradoxes, and don't drink the Kool-Aid. And, just as a quick side note, if any of the tech supply chain or trade data we mentioned gave you investment ideas regarding the CHIPS Act or agriculture, remember we are analysts of information, not your financial advisors.
So true. Keep your portfolios safe, people.
So I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over while you finish your coffee. Imagine for a second that you are an international journalist stationed in the region. How do you ethically report on a geopolitical conflict where one superpower aggressively demands that you pretend the other side simply does not exist?
That's a tough spot.
Do you put on the metaphorical wetsuit, accept the semantic dimensionality reduction, and play along with the stealth mode farce? Or do you report the complex facts you see with your own eyes? Ultimately, navigating this post-truth bubble is a choice between journalistic courage and manufactured reality.